And it's this framework called Sansai. What's interesting is that in Chinese, there's more than one word for luck. The Chinese actually have different conceptions of luck and fortune in their lives. And I think as a result, they end up with a much more accurate assessment of what luck is, what is chance, what is opportunity. And we're going to use it as a framework for this episode. But I also think it's just something that is useful for people to think about in their day-to-day lives. So the three different types of luck are literally translated as heaven luck, earth luck, and human luck. Now, heaven luck is basically the birth lottery. Where were you born? What are the traits that you were born with? Were you born into a good family? Were you born into a family with money? Were you born into a country that's functional and has good infrastructure? Or were you born into somewhere that has war? It's basically all the stuff that's outside of your control that just happens. There's zero agency going on. And as we'll discover, the best way to approach heaven luck is through shifting and adopting your perspective to the different things that happen in your life. The second luck is earth luck. And earth luck is kind of the environment that you move through. I think it's probably the hardest one to understand of the three lucks, but it's also arguably the most important one. Once you do kind of figure it out, it can have the largest benefits and effects on your life. But basically, earth luck is like the systems that you exist within. It is the environment that you live in. It's the people that you surround yourself with. A simple example is like living in New York City versus living in a tiny town in like South Dakota, right? If you live in New York City, you're going to be surrounded by so many people doing so many interesting things. There's going to be tons of jobs, tons of different careers and professions, tons of opportunities, tons of people you can meet and date. Whereas if you live in this tiny town in South Dakota, there's probably not a whole lot going on. It's probably very homogenous. There's probably very few opportunities, or all those opportunities are probably in like the same line of work, the same career. Everybody you meet is probably going to be very similar. And so in this sense, putting yourself in a much more dynamic environment full of more opportunities, you could say, quote unquote, makes you luckier, right? Like it gives you more surface area to stumble into opportunities and chance situations that benefit you. And so this is earth luck. It's like major macro decisions that alter and affect hundreds and hundreds of micro decisions. And then there's human luck, which is simply, what are your decisions? How are you choosing to act based on the probabilities in front of you? Based on the situations that you find yourself in, how well are you able to adapt to the circumstances? Now, the way I like to think about this is that if life is a poker game, heaven luck is the cards you're dealt. You can't control whether you're dealt good hands or bad hands. If the cards are dead in that poker game for you, that just happens and it sucks, right? Earth luck is the table you choose to sit down at. Human luck is your ability to play those cards as well as you possibly can. So even if you get shitty cards, you can still play those cards well and you can still win a lot of hands and make a lot of money if you're a very good poker player. Now, one of the things that's really interesting about poker is that if you ever talk to a poker professional, they will tell you that the single biggest decision you make is which table do you sit down at and where do you sit down at that table? Because there are certain players that you have to know you have an advantage or a disadvantage against. And there's also certain placement at the table that can put you at an advantage or disadvantage relative to those players. And so if you sit at a table where you're at a disadvantage, then you're creating bad luck for yourself. Whereas if you wait and find a table where you have a lot of advantage, then you're creating a lot of luck for yourself. So you said earlier that you were lucky. I'm curious, which of these three lucks do you believe you have benefited from?
I think the biggest one for me has probably been earth luck. I've had a lot of really good earth luck. Heaven luck was like, I don't know, I can see it either way. My human luck, I've made some good decisions. I made some pretty bad decisions. And I think it's all been mitigated by my earth luck.
Okay.
Yeah.
How so?
I grew up in one of those tiny towns you were talking about, right? In the Midwest, where there wasn't a lot going on. And it seems like that's not a real good draw of the heaven luck. But when I look back on it, I actually see that environment was if I was going to be a pretty poor kid growing up in America in the 90s and 2000s, that was the place to be. The school system I was in, it was a public school system. So you're thinking small town public school system, no big deal, but it was actually really good. Like the arts community there was insane for what we had. Like half the kids were in choir and band in the whole school. That's not how it is today. Some of the teachers I had were just amazing. I had a lot of like, even from an early age, I had a lot of like male teachers who were role models for me that I just don't think happens anymore too. In high school, I had a teacher who was he was an English teacher. He'd be teaching us about T.S. Eliot and Sylvia Plath during the day. And then he was a football coach too. So he'd be screaming at you. So I had this weird experience, I think is what I'm saying. I had a lot of people around me who, even though I wasn't born into like real fortunate circumstances, it seemed like there really was a village behind me. The weird thing though is I talked to people, other people around me, they didn't have the same experience, right? Like I feel like I was lucky and I talked to them about that and they're like, I did not have that experience. For whatever reason, like my set of heaven luck and human luck matched that environment very, very well. And I benefited greatly from it. Not everybody did. So I just think I think the terrain that I've traversed through has been very, very fortunate for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which kind of luck do you think you've benefited from most so far?
This is going to be a very obnoxious answer.
Okay.
I think I've been so lucky in all three. My family's relatively wealthy, born in the US, born in literally the fastest growing city in America. Just had, every opportunity was kind of laid out in front of me. I've had great health. Have never had like any sort of catastrophic, accident or thing happen. I think I've made excellent earth luck decisions. I think that's something that I've just kind of intuitively been very good at, like that macro decision that negates thousands of micro decisions. I seem to have a sense of like knowing where to put myself at the right time, different places to live, different groups of people to meet. Like you could look at my career and say, I've become very lucky. I think some of the best earth luck decisions often look lucky on the outside, even though inside they're very smart, because generally speaking, the largest opportunities, the reason they're opportunities is because most people underestimate them, right? So it's like when I started blogging in like 2008, 2009, very quickly I was convinced, I'm like, this is the future of media. If I throw myself into this and get really good at it before anybody else, I'm just going to have like such a ridiculous amount of upside and advantage. And I was right about that, right? And it's funny because for probably 6-7 years, my bunch of friends and family back home were like, dude, when are you going to get a job? Like, what's this internet thing you're doing? Like, you're wasting your life. You need to start a real career, all this stuff. And then you fast forward 10 or 15 years and you're like, wow, like Mark was very fortunate. And then I think on the human luck side, that's just good micro decision making, right? Like understanding in the moment, what is a high ROI bet to take, whether it's with a person you're dating, a place that you're living, a work project that you're taking on. If you look at like the range of outcomes my decisions could have produced, I think I'm definitely towards very much towards the higher band of like what potential outcomes could have happened. I think I've experienced luck across the board in all three.
Yeah, sure. There was some heaven luck and a lot of that. Like you just, and I know you've acknowledged that, but like, with the blogging and the internet thing, like we're the right age for that, right? We're born at the right time and right place for that.
In the right country.
Now you see those levels though, all working together.
Yeah. And so on one level, it's like, yeah, I did get lucky. On the other level, it's like, I also made really good decisions. But on another level, it's like those decisions also worked out almost as well as they could have. Because there is a world where a lot of those same decisions didn't work out nearly as well. Coming back to the fairness piece, the justice piece, like this is what we struggle with so much, is that it is always both of these forces in tension. Like it is both a large amount of variables outside of our control and a large amount of variables inside of our control happening at all times. And so anytime you want to convince yourself that all of the outcome is due to stuff outside of your control, it's not hard to find a narrative or explanation that will justify that. And similarly, if you want to find a narrative that justifies your outcomes as only your decisions, it's not very hard to find that narrative or justification as well. So like, I think people need to be very careful in how they explain their outcomes in life and explain the outcomes of other people in life as well, because it is always some mixture of fortune and skill operating at all times.
Yeah, so Machiavelli was kind of right in that way, right? Luck is a raging river, yes. And you can divert parts of it and make little dams and stuff like that. A lot of it you can control, a lot of it you can't. And the rest of this episode is how to do that, I think, yeah.